podcast. I'm your host, Amelie. I created Celestic Intelligence podcast. I've actually started this podcast in 2022, but I didn't name it Celestic Intelligence until early last year when I started going regularly. And I think I started around episode 7. So, episode 60, like we're getting up there. And it is a long form, just kind of talk for all things emotional intelligence, everything that you can think of quantum physics and just energy in general. And it's a great way for me to put together a lot of the thoughts and feels that I have and just the things that I think about into a podcast stream for you guys to listen to. So I hope you enjoy it. It is just created for like minded individuals to come and we can just talk about this stuff, or you can just listen to somebody talk about it. I know I like listening to podcasts when I go to sleep at night, or during the day, just to have some really interesting chatter going on and make me think about things in a different way. Um, but really, this year I've found, as opposed to last year, I was just kind of teaching it. And this year it's more embodying it. So, really integrating all of the information that I'm pulling in and kind of talking about every episode and putting it together to where it's actually being embodied, which is a real amazing thing to think about. So, episode 60 is a big milestone. It's really wonderful to get here. Today, we're going to be talking about clarity. If you guys have been following me, or maybe if you're just tuning in, this podcast is designed this year with a little bit of structure. And we're actually in unit called structure right now. So, the first one was a foundational. Um, was foundations. We were talking about identity and really just kind of honing in on all that information that I was going over last year and kind of integrating new things into the sphere. Last week or earlier this week on Tuesday, I started talking about nervous system governance and why it's so important to have that governance for you, because we're talking about structure right now. We're building in our self leadership mechanisms. And so clarity comes into that as well. I pulled the King of Cups and the Page of Pentacles, which really tune into that clarity piece very deeply. And so the King of Cups is a little bit more emotional sovereignty. So really having emotions, but having no reaction to those emotions, like little reaction to those emotions. Kind of just, when you're looking at him, he's sitting and just enjoying his little golden cup of tea and not letting anything interfere with him. So he's just chilling, unlike Queen of Cups, who's very much emotionally regulated. He's even more emotionally regulated and just kind of observing the emotions instead of letting them spill out everywhere. He's containing that. And then the Page of Pentacles is instead of just learning about it, it's putting it into practice. So that's what we're going to be talking about today as far as clarity is concerned. All right. So those cards I pulled really did hit for and land for the topic today of why clarity feels aggressive. And so, like I said, this is going to be a little bit more structured. Hello, Shiva. And Blaze, welcome and thank you for commenting. I appreciate it. Thanks for the thumbs up, whomever. And don't forget to like, and if you haven't subbed, sub please. Um, and I'll just do a brief introduction. My name is Amelie, and this is the Celestic Intelligence Podcast. Today we're talking about episode 60, Why Clarity Feels Aggressive. All right. So we're really talking about power here. So when you hear the word aggressive, it brings to mind power. And what clarity is this clean exchange. Clarity is like being able to speak something that you see as far as truth. Hello, Benedict. Thank you for saying hi. Um, and so we're thinking about how that structure, how that exchange happens and happens cleanly with clarity and the structure of that. Because when you speak something, it's like when you speak, just think of like wind. When wind blows, it like moves dust everywhere. But when you speak, like energy in the universe starts moving around you. So when you speak something about like for example, yesterday I was having a chat with somebody and they said we're in the we're in a bad timeline. We got put in a bad timeline, blah blah blah, whatever. And I was like, well, my timeline is the best timeline for me, and I am having a great time. Like, don't curse my timeline because you have whatever is going on in your mind. My timeline is very good for me, right? Okay. I don't like to speak ill of because I know how powerful language is. So when you start to speak words, you make sure that the words that you're speaking are what you want to have happen. Because if you're sitting there talking negatively, like those things will come, like you're basically speaking that. It's an energy that you're putting out. Okay. So, and that's really just the signal that your inner cathedral is projecting out. Like the cathedrals all had these. When I got to go across the country, I was looking at the churches, and like so many of the churches had these huge stones in front of the doors, and then just strategically around the temple of whatever was built, because they're all different kinds. And I'm just looking, I'm like, oh my gosh, like that is a signal. Like it was to help whatever the energy in there was expand out even further. Like they knew what they were doing when they were doing that. Okay, so let's talk about that signal. So we're talking about our own inner signals, like our own personal signals, because we're working on self-leadership here. Self-leadership is really what we're working on, and having that really strong connection to our own personal power. So the misread signal, when um, you're unclear and you're moving into clarity, it might seem like a little bit too much for somebody. So they'll think, oh, they're being too much because now, like, instead of being kind of a um, overextending themselves to like make you feel better or pulling away, um, now they're thinking that you're too much because now you're asking them for something, even though they've been overextending themselves to help you out. So when you start to become clear and you're stepping into that clarity, you're no longer unclear, right? Now you're clear. And the moment somebody gets clear, others feel pushed. And I think that when we're moving from a space of where we're not being, we're not being clear with what we would like in the situation, um, other people just feel like what they can take advantage of that. And that's completely normal. And I can understand that because I've been that person for a long time. But when I get clear about the things they want, like if I'm on a date, instead of ghosting somebody, I'll say, hey, I think that you're a great person. However, like there's just things that we don't align with, and which is fine. You're where you are at, I'm where I am at, but because of this misalignment, us proceeding any further, it wouldn't be kind for either of us to like put ourselves through that. So being clear up front with somebody and saying this is what I want can seem aggressive, but it's really not aggressive. It's actually super kind. But other people might feel pushed because they're used to getting their way with whatever, whomever. Or maybe they're reading signals and they think, like, oh, I totally have the ability to go and enter into them. So, one of the misread signals, when when you start to speak clear, the reason why it might feel aggressive is because it removes this wiggle room and this fantasy, and control that you might have. And those people that are used to getting away with things with you, That's the best thing to do is be upfront. I agree. And you know what? I want people to be upfront with me. I've been in jobs where I could tell that they're like there was an energy shift, and the signal that I was getting was they didn't want me around anymore. And instead of being upfront and honest about we we don't want you around, they like do these weird moves where they change your role, or they do this or they do that, or they alienate you. And like the weird thing is, like, you can feel it as being the targeted individual, but it's like, just be honest about it. And in my exit interview, I was like, if you guys didn't want me around, you should have just like let me go. I would have been completely fine with that. But instead, you went around this passive aggressive way of getting rid of me. And it's weird, you know? Basically trying to get you to leave on your, yeah, it's so passive aggressive. It's very much unclear. And already I was getting these messages from the universe of like, you don't want that monetary energy entering you. Like, I didn't even want to take the paycheck anymore. That's how real the energy was. So it's so weird for me to kind of pull back and see it in that way. And I was really clear in my exit interview. I was like, I wish that if you guys really wanted to get rid of me and you wanted to have a different management style and you didn't like the way that I was doing things, that you would have just like made that decision instead of being like this passive aggressive way um, of like removing me. So I would have been fine with it. But so clarity removes wiggle room, it removes fantasy, and it removes control. And so that's why it might feel aggressive to somebody, because they're so used to getting away with your lack of boundaries and your lack of clarity. And so when you start to do the inner work of really coming into yourself and being able to speak up for yourself, and maybe it might start, you might be the Page of Pentacles, and starting it might be really really hard and difficult, but we're moving towards this really strong, where things, you don't have those same reactions and there's no leakage of your energy into these other places. You're able to keep it bound within yourself, and it protects you. And you know what? You're the only person that really you're the only like person that's authoring your life. Otherwise, like I said in previous podcasts, something or someone else is going to get in there and take over your agency and start driving your body vehicle, okay? So we're pulling all of that back into ourselves and being really conscious. If we're going to be giving away our agency, we're going to be thinking about, okay, do I really want this person driving my vehicle? And to what extent are they doing it? Um, Mr. Nargis is in the house. No, I take. Okay. Interesting. I take. Okay, Meowdy. Meowdy bro. So let's frame it clean. So confusion benefits the person avoiding any responsibility. Okay. And we're being, how you doing, Nargis? Good to see you here. So confusion benefits the person that's avoiding responsibility, and clarity activates certain decision points that people weren't ready to take. Okay. Clarity activates those decision points. So when you're very clear, it might seem aggressive. However, it's not like, at first it might seem aggressive, but once the energy plays out, it's actually really nice to both parties of that clarity. Now, if you're activating somebody and they're like, that was really aggressive, why didn't they let me, and they're having some sort of ego issue with the decision that's been made and they can't come to terms and accept that decision, that's on them. Like they need to go through that. It's not for you to like work through other people's stuff. It's it doesn't work that way. Like you're the only person that you can work on your own things. Even when you have children, like there's this tension and aggressiveness that happens, especially in the middle of raising my last teenager, and there's still this tension and aggression, and um, that happens in certain areas. It's just going to happen because they're in their own threshold of coming into their own from being a child into now they're becoming a teenager and adult. So there's a lot of things that we work on as far as clarity and being upfront about their feelings about certain things or the way that they want things to be managed. Okay. And so those things will come back to you as a parent, and you're like, oh, how am I going to manage this? And sometimes you might get frustrated, like, oh my gosh, we've been through this so many times. What am I going to do? Okay. So we're taking back responsibility. We're taking back our own self leadership. We're being very clear about what that looks like. Okay. When somebody asks you a question, be very clear about, you could be kind about your delivery and tactful about your delivery, but be very clear about where you stand with whatever it is. Okay. Confusion is an indication that there's some sort of cognitive dissonance going on within your system that needs to be sorted out. Okay. Now, what clarity actually is, and not what people project it is, all right? Clarity is an accurate self definition. So you're able to define yourself accurately. Okay. It's clean communication with zero distortion. There's no distortion in the message that you're sending. It's very clean and clear communication. All right. There's an ownership of your needs, of your limits, and of what your standards are. Right. When you're not speaking those things, people are going to walk all over whatever your standards are. They're going to walk, they're going to test your limits. I'm just talking about my teenager starting to kind of test limits and see what can I get away with, can I not get away with it. And it's not in a negative way. It's just, that's a natural thing of like, where they're trying to like figure out what your signal is by testing where are the distortions. All right. And then ownership of your needs. Like, what do you need? Are you able to go to your partner and say, hey, look, I need this right now. I need a little bit of space right now. I need at least an hour a day where I can just sit in silence and not have the noise of all of the things that go on in the home. Like I just need this block of time to like clear my head so that I can come back and be present in that situation. All right. Really owning those needs and then being able to clearly speak it and give a reasonable standard of why you need that. Okay. So there's ownership here. And then there's when we're in clarity, there's this energetic congruence of what you say equals what you do. All right. What you say equals what you do. So there's no distortion there as well. What you say and what you do, like they're equal. All right. So even though this is titled Why Clarity Seems Aggressive, it's not. It's simply assertive. You're in charge of your own, you're in leadership position of your own self, and you're clearly speaking what that is. Now, clarity is not aggression, okay? It's not aggression. It's not control. It's not a form of punishment, okay? And um, there's no emotional reactivity. we're in control of our emotions. We have very solid emotional regulation. Okay. Because things are not confusing us, it's not destabilizing us, it's not making us question our identities. We're very clear on that because the first thing that, you know, we do is an accurate self definition of who am I, what do I like, what do I not like, how do I want my life authored, and am I in am I going in a direction that I feel fulfilled in going? Okay. Now, clarity might feel aggressive, but it's not attacking anybody. It's just a revelation. Okay. It's revealing things that are not being said. Okay. Why clarity feels aggressive to others. Okay, let's really open this up. Why it might feel aggressive to others. So it removes access to us with no room for negotiation. There's no negotiation. All right. I was very clear with somebody and I said, look, I went on a date with this guy, and afterwards, we had the follow up conversation. It was just text messages. And he was interested in a second date. And I said, you know what? It's a no from me. And that's very small words, but there was a little bit more words. And I was like, it's a no from me. Okay. And that removal of access for me kind of triggered him a little bit. And he kind of went a little haywire and started attacking me. And I was like, look, I just had some time to sit and think about it. I've given you enough information to say, like, you don't have access to me anymore. And he overstepped the boundaries. And I said, look, don't talk to me ever again. And he still came back. And so my next step was blocking him. I gave him enough opportunity, enough access, and enough clear explanation. And there was no room for negotiation. And there was still a continuation of some form of negotiation. And I was like, I'm not available for that negotiation. I've given you my clear reason why I don't think. And it was a reasonable explanation. Mike's in the house. Mike. Um, so a lot of people are used to giving really soft no's. All right. They'll delay, they'll be ambiguous, they're not clearly saying a no and doing it in a tactful way. So when people are used to that, they think, I'm going to get access and now I can negotiate that access. Okay. Now, clarity is a closed door. There's no maybe leaders. When we're being clear and we're stepping into clarity, we're there's no maybe leaders. There's no, oh, but if this, like, there's no negotiation. It's a very clear, this is how it's going to be. All right. Clarity feels aggressive. So that might feel aggressive to some people. Clarity may also um, expose certain hidden contracts. All right. Maybe certain unspoken expectations are becoming visible. Okay. That's a hidden contract. This expectation that this is going to happen. I see it on TikTok. Maybe you guys are not TikTok, but I see it in the reels, like probably mostly Instagram and YouTube, where this girl's filming herself, and I don't know if they're real or not, but this is a good example. This girl's filming herself. She's going on a first date with some guy, and he's like, if I'm not going to get lucky, we're splitting the check. And so that's a hidden contract. Okay. It's a hidden contract. There's unspoken expectations. And then all of a sudden, all of a sudden, it's becoming very visible. And now he's like, if I'm paying for dinner, then you're going to sleep with me. just a very interesting form of prostitution, a hidden contract prostitution situation. um, and and the gal, I don't know, there's not a lot of context, but I'm just using it as an example. The gal was very clear, like, you invited me out to dinner. I accepted because I was interested in seeing like how our dynamic would be. And, I'm not interested in sleeping with you on a first date. If that's her clean communication and speaking that and really laying out like all the details. And um he was being ambiguous of saying, yeah, I'll take you out to dinner, and not really having that conversation to clear out like any ambiguity. That contract is now exposed. Okay. um Maybe the I thought you would blah 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 becomes exposed. That's another um hidden contract that's getting exposed in that moment. um Another reason why clarity might feel aggressive to others is it forces self responsibility. Okay. There's no more outsourcing any emotional regulation, and you're not leaning in on any flexibility. Okay. And finally, it's interrupting some form of power dynamic that is going on as well. People will benefit from your confusion. Okay. People who are benefiting from your confusion are going to resist any clarity that you have. Oh, I see it. I mean, Mike, I see it on I see it on YouTube or maybe Instagram all the time. Like, I think my algorithm hit a certain feed or something like that, but it's like some of it's really crazy. Um I'm at a point of where, like, if you want to take me out and you're saying let's go to dinner, I'm like, I'm not interested in dinner. It's no. Coffee? No. No. A tavern? A bar? No. I don't care. Unless there's like bingo or something that we're going and playing. That might be a reason to go. But other than that, no, not interested. Those environments, like, they invite ambiguity, and it's just talking, and through just talking with somebody and one on one and just kind of like having dinner, there's a lot of ways that people can manipulate that and like create this fantasy. And I would prefer, if I would recommend, if you're dating right now, that instead of dinner or bars or like coffee, that you go out and do something physical, like dancing, or maybe go to a sports park where you can go hit like baseballs or whatever. Like, think of something that is more active where your energy is going to be showcased. It's, I just say no. In fact, I get I feel really sick when I see that. So interrupts power dynamics. People benefiting from your confusion, they will resist your clarity. I just said, like, I was very clear. I was like, I'm not interested in a second date. If the first date is any indicator of the second date, then I'm not interested. And then the other time that I went, I did go on a second date, even though like I kind of didn't want to, but I was like, you know what? I'll give a second chance right now. We'll see. And it was weird. It was a very weird situation. So I think the truth that I had spoke of on the first date finally was revealed to this person. And yeah, It's fine. It's fine. All right. Moving on, we're going to um so last Thursday I talked about the feminine trinity, and that is Mary Magdalene, um Lilith, and Sophia. And Lilith has been a very interesting archetype. So it's a Jungian archetype, um, that I'm coming at it from. A lot of people, their initial reaction is Lilith is a demon. Um, it's a destructive feminine, and there's a lot of fear around it, which is, I understand. Like, there's a lot of fear of this untamed feminine woman, who says no and is okay with going and being on her own. And the reason why I have been interested in it is because I've had to, frankly, be out in this somewhat of a wilderness, and had to I had to pull back on places where I was overextending, and not just lose like family members, but lose friends that and people that had been in my life for, 20 and 30 years. Where I was like, I can't have you in my life anymore. I'm sorry. Like, I just can't. Like, the dynamic is doesn't feel right to me. And even though we have this connection, I know that you love and care for me, I can't have you be in my energy field anymore. Okay. Um, Now, before, there is that would have been I would have been in this Lilith suppression pattern, meaning I'm pulling back my power and I'm allowing those relationships to continue, okay, without honoring myself, right? I'm putting my self leadership on the table and allowing other people to walk on my energy, even though we like both love and care for each other in our own ways. Okay. The archetype of Lilith is an unapologetic self honoring. All right. This goes for both men and women. This is not just women only. Okay. Men have feminine energy in their being as well. And if you're not honoring yourself, then you're suppressing that Lilith part of you that knows it needs to say no. Okay. Why would people dilute their truth? Okay. One is a fear of rejection. They don't want to be alone. And I get it. It's terrifying to be alone. I've had to have that real visceral one-on-one contact with myself over the last year and a half, 2 years, where it's not just rejection, but just being abandoned. Like, all of those feelings of like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I have to like walk through this. Life is kind of forcing me into this path. So there's a fear of rejection. There's a fear of being labeled difficult or maybe even selfish, which I've had people come up and say, call me a narcissist, and I'm like, that's very interesting. Okay, well, maybe I am being a little bit narcissistic and thinking. I don't think narcissism is necessarily bad. Um, the the name narcissist has been thrown around to kind of misdefine it. So that I think the definition is a little loose, loosey goosey. But having a little bit of narcissistic traits isn't bad, because that might be more defined as self love. It's not like full on NPD, which is only 2% of the population has full on NPD. So they're not even like, most people are even diagnosed narcissists when, the ex is like, oh my gosh, you have such a narcissist. Well, How much were you self honoring yourself and being clear and having your own self leadership in your life? Because if you were, you wouldn't have even gotten in that relationship with a person like that. It wouldn't have happened. Okay. So I think that more so that this suppression of that Lilith self unapologetic self honoring is probably more likely. Okay. Um, Conditioning to equate love with self sacrifice is another um, reason why that Lilith will be suppressed. Meaning, if you put aside your own wants and needs and desires and you put that on the shelf and you take care of all the children and you take care of the house and then you contribute to the bills and like, I mean, that's where a lot of women find themselves and they've sacrificed themselves to like support this family. And because of that sacrifice, now they're not even connected with that passionate love that they had for their partner that began this whole scenario in the first place. Okay. They equate that with love. And I'm like really good. I'm like really good at this. I will self sacrifice to like make house and home put together. Vampire. You feeling vampiric, Mike? Okay. But to a certain degree, we in our society have been conditioned to think that this form of self-sacrifice is love. Okay. And so it's kind of mucked around with that like love and self-sacrifice energy. Like those both have been kind of muddled in this conditioning. And that's how truth is diluted. Okay. And then finally, we have safety patterns from past relational wounds will come up and it will cause this suppression of our own self honor of what we need, what we want, what we desire in life. Now, the core distortion of why people won't hold clarity is if I am clear, I will lose connection. And remember, I talked about this year being the year of connection. And it's it's interesting because we have these like inverse truths that we hold as truth, but it's like an inverse truth where if I'm clear, I'm going to lose connection. But the truth of it is if you are clear, you're going to have a stronger connection because now when you're on in a different self leadership frequency and your identity is stable and you're able to like see a lot clearly, speak a lot clearly, now your signal changes, okay, from distorted to clean. And then now when you communicate, the people that are hearing you communicate, you're bringing in new people. And that's why when the old people leave, the new people will come in because you've changed your frequency. You've changed that signal that's going out. And now those people with that same signal are going to entrain to you. All right. If you took, I'd go grab it, but I have, um, oh my gosh, I can't even think of the word right now. Um, but they're little frequencies. I have frequencies. And if you have two of the same frequencies and you hit one and it starts to vibrate and send a signal and you have one of the same frequency right next to it, when you hit this one and it starts to vibrate, this one will also start to vibrate. It's going to feel that same frequency. But if it was off a frequency and it wasn't the same hertz, this one would be going, but this one would just stay the same. Okay. If you're clear, you're not losing connection. When you get clear on your own self leadership, when you get clear, you're going to bring in those people that have your same clear frequency now. And the more clear you get, the I mean, it might change frequently, but that's not a bad thing. The more it the more clear you get, the more clear connections you get. They're going to hear your frequency, they're going to feel your vibe, and they're going to want to be around it. Or if they're not on that same vibe, they're like, "Oh my gosh, like what is that?" They're going to be magnetized to it, okay? So people will soften their standards, they'll over explain, they won't speak the truth, they'll just hold it. And I'm guilty of this for sure. I'm not like the cleanest. I'm speaking into what I'm working on right now is becoming more clear, of really having a lot of self-honor and getting to this place where I don't need to explain. I said what I needed to say. It was clear enough. And if you couldn't hear it, that's not my problem. But I gave you enough information. I'm not going to soften my standards because I know that if I did, it'd be a waste of energy because you're not going to be able to hear what I have to say, anyways, if you couldn't hear the simple message that I gave you, the simple signal that I gave. Okay. And this one is a huge one, is saying yes, even though you want to say no or you mean to say no. All right. Saying yes while meaning no. That's a huge one. It doesn't serve you, and it distorts your signal. And so you're going to continue bringing in these distorted signals of people that think that they can walk all over you because they're like, "Oh, they'll say yes to anything." It's the I don't have a mug. Yeah, I'm gonna have to have you come in on Saturday. And then they come in on Saturday, right? I wish I had a mug. It would have made it a little bit more fun. Made it a little bit more funny. But people will pull back their own personal power, okay? And they'll suppress that authentic self honor that they maybe they want to have that for themselves, but they haven't gotten to that point of where they're able to speak in clarity and say like, "No, I don't have time to do that. I'm sorry." Okay? People pleasing as power leakage. Now we're talking about personal power here. This is a very strong emotional intelligence pillar. Okay. This is actually one that I struggle with. I think I'd be interested in seeing what my new SEI, uh, what were the things? My emotional intelligence, how it's improved over the years. I took one in 2022, and so it would be interesting to see 2022 to compared to now and see how my frequency has changed. But people pleasing was one of my lower scores, and it was still high. It was a 9 out of 15. It wasn't necessarily low, but it was like there's a lot of improvement that could have went on in it. But let's call people pleasing what it really is. People pleasing is not kindness, okay? This is self abandonment in disguise. And self abandonment was one of my highest watched podcasts that I have done to date. Okay. People pleasing is not kindness, it's self abandonment in disguise. It creates resentment, it creates confusion in others, and it creates this instability in the relationship dynamics. Okay. The real hard truth here is that if you are unclear, you're participating in the very dysfunction that you dislike. That's the real hard truth. When you're unclear, you're participating in this really odd relational dysfunction. Okay, it creates this instability in the relationships that you have. All right. Now let's talk about rage versus clarity, because rage is also associated with this Lilith archetype. And I also struggle with the rage. um Not to say that I don't have my moments of being kind of off kilter and wanting to just rant and rave, and I especially in the last couple days I've actually been really aggressive in like the interactions that I've been having with people. All right. But let's talk about the difference here of clarity and rage. This is um this is a refinement of your nervous system understanding. Now, there's unprocessed rage, which is destructive rage. And it comes from suppression, it comes from um, buildups. And so when those kind of come to the surface, then all of a sudden it's like, I've been holding on to this energy for 5 months. And now I've had it up to here with it, and I'm just going to destroy everything around me. Okay. That's where that unprocessed destructive rage can come from. It's explosive. There's a lot of blaming. It might be chaotic. And it's really just discharging pain. All right. Without really creating a positive resolution. It's just, you know, it just digs and kind of this like messy, like so fresh, so clean. So fresh and so clean, clean. Ain't nobody. All right. I'm not trying to get, I can't get demonetized. Try not get a strike from YouTube, right? Um, but it's explosive, it's blaming, it's very chaotic, it's hard to follow, and it lacks direction. So, this destructive rage really is, is unhelpful, right? But it's like for so long, if you're not speaking in clarity, then like all these things are stacking up, and then you're like, I've been doing this, blah 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 blah, and you don't do anything, um, and then there's like a lot of unfairness that comes from that, and in like unequal responsibility in relations. Like I said, we're kind of messing with some relational dynamics when we're people pleasing. And so for people pleasers, like there just comes a point where it's just like, and it just like spills out everywhere. Right. However, there is like this sacred clean rage, which is a clarifying force. It's clarity. Okay. Clarifying. And it comes from truth hitting a boundary. Let's say you've laid out the boundary and now the boundary gets stepped over. Okay. And now the truth comes out of it. I said my boundary, you crossed it, and now I hear the consequences. Okay. It's a little bit more focused. It's very much contained, right? The it's not rage in the way that we think of destructive rage. This is rage in a very clean way, right? So it's coming in the form of truth, and it's very much more intentional. There's no like misdirection. It's very intentional from where it's coming from. And then the energy of it moves into decision and structure. Okay. How are we going to figure out what to do from this boundary crossing, first and foremost? And then how are we structuring it in the future to make sure that that boundary does not get crossed again? Okay. Um, this way that I'm speaking of really just protects the integrity of the person holding the boundary and speaking in clarity and truth, and um, really honors the other person as well, because they now get to choose. They, like I said at the beginning, when you speak in clarity, now you're adding a decision point in that clarity. And that person might think it's aggressive. Oh my gosh, I can't believe they stopped me from doing whatever I wanted to do. Right? But it really protects when that one person is speaking in clarity. Now that person has that decision point of, do I continue to interact with this person that's not letting me like run roughshod over them, or do I go away and like go find somebody else to walk all over? Because there's plenty of people that will let you do that. Unfortunately, we're working on changing that, but it really depends on like that one person of, are they going to do that? Okay. So rage really isn't the problem, it's the way that it's framed. Um, it really is this unintegrated rage that is the problem, the destructive rage, that chaotic rage. But if we can really turn that back into ourselves and become really clear about, okay, I don't like the way that these things are going, and then say those things. Now we're going from this unintegrated rage where it just build up, spill out everywhere, to, oh, I'm starting to feel uh, a little bit of a boundary crossing, and now I'm going to say something about it. All right. The clarity is going to carry a little bit of a charge because it's not the destructive rage. It's gonna have truth and then self-protection behind it. And remember, at the beginning, people find clarity aggressive because they're used to being able to walk all over people and get what they want, because they're really good about finding those individuals that will allow that to happen. So it really doesn't please people to people please. All right. Because it does create this really odd relational dynamic. All right. Now we're still in our structure and we're talking nervous system governance, which is important. Okay. And we expanded on it earlier this week. But in the nervous system, with the clarity, why this feels unsafe is one, because like our culture has kind of conditioned it into us to not speak clearly and have our boundaries and be really upfront and honest. Like, some people have a hard time dating because they don't want to tell people no. And then, like, the first person that gives them attention, they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just like, they just like throw themselves at them. When really they need, like, it would be best serving all parties to just be really honest and say, you know what, there's nothing wrong. It's not for me, right? Because there really isn't anything wrong with anybody. It's just you got to be really upfront and honest with yourself and honor yourself and say, that's not for me. That's not what I want. Okay. Now, why it feels unsafe to be clear is that clarity can turn into conflict, or that's what our body associates it with. Okay. Clarity turns into conflict, which turns into rejection, which turns into danger. And danger puts us into that nervous system mode where we're in our animal brain, that amygdala response, and now we associate that with death. Okay? So clarity conflict, rejection, danger, death. Okay, and that's like, if you really just run it through the gambit, that's really what at the very base of all this fear is, we're afraid of dying. And these are just like interactions that we're having, people that we're going to coffee with, people that we're having dinner with, people that we're in relationships with. We're afraid of being clear because if we're clear, then we die. If we're going down this loop. It's so simple, and it's also like pretty funny to think that that is the line, the progression of where it goes. Okay. So people will default into the people pleasing. They'll default into the fawning, which is where they ingratiate themselves and just let themselves get walked over by whomever is wanting access to their energy. They'll freeze, meaning that they just won't have any emotional um, response to the people, or they'll deflect. Okay, just kind of a flight response. But I talked about, I think it was earlier this week, we talked about the somatic relationship with ourselves, because the somatics is like, it's stuck in the body. So it's stuck in different areas of the body. It might be in the jaw, maybe your jaw tightens, and that might be because you don't want to speak. Okay. In the back, like you feel like you just have to carry people. And so that might be an indication somatically of something that's going on. All right. So just really kind of figure out where in your body that's kind of hidden, and you can get a little bit more information for yourself. Clarity is not danger, and that's the coding that we're putting in. Clarity is not danger. In fact, it's a form of self-love. Okay, this is a personal power. This is part of emotional intelligence. Personal power is a part of emotional intelligence. Clarity is self-love. Setting a boundary is self-love. Okay, it's direction. It's redirecting that. That's basically like, let's say you have a door. You're not going to just let everybody in. Okay, that door is that decision point. Okay, now when you're people pleasing, it's open. But when you close the door, now in order to get access, you need to ask for it, and you need to have an invitation. Okay, so there's a direction point here. And some people are just feel like they have access to everybody. Well, no, they don't. Not in our world, not when we're expressing our own agency. That's not happening. Okay. Now let's talk about clean exchange and structure, which is this is the backbone of sovereignty. Sovereignty is merely just your agency of, are you driving your ship? Are you like aware of what's going on inside? But let's talk about it in the real world. So clean exchange requires clear agreements, okay? Defined expectations, okay? Maybe before you go on the date, say, in your dating profile, you're just like, this is my expectations. If you take me on a date, there's certain expectations that we're going to talk about before like any of that happens. It's not just yes to everybody. Okay, there's transparent communication. You're speaking clearly about all the things that could come up in any situation. And then there's accountability on both sides. Okay, that's a clean exchange. That's a clean, clear exchange. Now, some examples might be money conversations. If you've ever had a roommate, right? I don't even think you should limit money conversations in roommate situations. Have it written out and signed and even get it notarized or however you got to do it in your state. If you're going to have a roommate, do all that. Have the money conversation. If they're coming in and you already have all of asking me why I would say this, have all of the expectations written out. It's going to be this much to move in. It's refundable. This is going towards rent. This is how bills are split. Or maybe it's just one monthly payment of this amount, and I'll take care of making sure the bills are paid. Really have those like upfront main conversations, okay? Maybe time boundaries is another thing. Um, Sometimes when I'm out in public, people will come up, they'll see me and they'll just come up to me and they'll be like, oh, hey. And then it's like, they'll keep talking and talking and talking. I love talking, don't get me wrong. But when I'm out in public and I'm shopping, I'm like, I have a timeline of, how long I want to be there. I don't want to be there for another 30 minutes because we're just having this like conversation, okay? My time is money to me. Like, I mean, I love lounging a lot, and that's what I like to do. And when I'm out in public, I'm not lounging at home. But think about those time boundaries. Just when you get into conversations, like be really clear. You know what? It's been really great talking to you, but I gotta go. Talking about rage reminds me of the poem "Do not go gentle into that good night." I don't know why. I'm gonna have to read that. Just text it to me so I remember. This next one is huge. It's emotional labor. I listen to a lot of comfort. I think it's called Comfort Level Podcast, and it's basically where they have this Reddit thread of people asking, like, "Am I the asshole for whatever the situation is?" And the amount of people that have these unequal relationships where they're carrying all the emotional labor and their partner like just doesn't feel like they have to do any of it. And I'm like, why are you even doing that? How did you get yourself into that situation? um but I also see it in threads on Facebook of groups that I'm in. I have like women groups that I'm in, and I see a lot of the women right now. They're just like, I'm exhausted because now husband does this and that, or doesn't do this or that. And I'm just exhausted. And it's like, yeah, you've been pulling not just the housework and raising the kids and working and doing whatever, but you're also pulling all of the emotional labor and carrying that family. And that's why you're exhausted. Okay. It's 9/11. Okay. So you're carrying a certain emotional labor in that family because you don't have clear agreements. Okay. And then another clean exchange example are roles in relationships. Um, if you're in a relationship and you don't have clear roles of who is taking care of what, um, this the lack of clarity in these areas, let's say it's in a relationship, is unstable. If it's unclear, it's unstable. If it's unclear, it's unstable. This could be any relationships. Okay? No question. That's how it is. How it be. All right. I'm almost done. I promise. My lavender chamomile tea is kicking in, anyways. It was good though. I ran out of my favorite tea. All right. Now let's talk about the identity shift of when someone, of becoming someone who is clear. Now, this is going to be if you're any of the things where you're not speaking in clarity and you're afraid because you think it's going to allow all this rejection and conflict into your life, okay, you're going to experience an ego death rebirth moment. All right. And this is another reason why people won't do the work. It's very, I'm not going to say it's easy work. It's difficult work to do. It feels awful. It feels awful. It's not easy. Okay. Especially if you have strong attachments to the people around you. Okay. You might have to get rid of some people that you really, really love, but they're not going to be on that same frequency with you. And they're going to, they might they might magnetize away. They might push, that magnet might flip and push them away. If you've ever played with magnets as a kid, um, when you get two magnets together, they'll either stick together or you can turn them around and you can like push it away. Okay. And that's something that happens when you start to change your identity into this person who becomes clear. Okay. You're no longer that easy person. You're not the easy one to get along with. All right. And that might create a little bit of distortion in your life where, like, now they just won't come around you anymore. You're no longer the understanding one at your own expense. You're not saying yes to everything. Now you're saying, no, I'm not going to come help you move for the fifth time in the last 5 years. Okay. And now you're no longer the one who's absorbing chaos. People aren't going to come around you with their drama anymore if you're like, look, I love you a lot, but I don't have the time to deal with the drama that's going on in your life. Okay. You don't even have to say that with words. You can just say it energetically. I don't have time for that. Right. Then, um, as you're going through this ego death and this rebirth moment, you're becoming somebody, as you're becoming clear and doing this identity shift. You're the one that defines the reality in your space. Okay. You're defining that reality. And when I say that you're the author of your life, like, you are the author of your life with your words, with your actions, with who you keep around, with whatever your frequency and your vibe and your timeline is, like, you're that creator of that reality. Okay. And also become the one who can be felt clearly, as those other people that are like, oh, you're not the easy one, you don't understand anymore, you're not like offering yourself up like you used to. You're going to start inviting new people in. Okay. There's going to be new people popping into your field that aren't going to, they're going to respect where you're at. Okay. It's not the end. It feels like it when you're going through it. It's not easy. It does feel, it does feel very difficult because there's a part of you that is dying a little bit. Okay. But the truth here in this identity shift is that clarity changes who has access to you. All right. Less people are going to have access to you. And then the people that do have access to you are going to be a lot more respectful of your boundaries because you've said the truth that you want to have in your life. That reality is being recreated. All right. Let's talk about integration, and then we'll close. All right. I'm going to go back to reading my book. I've been reading a book. I'm doing really good, you guys. I think I'm just like page 55 or something. That's awesome. All right, let's talk about integration. So, how to embody clarity without overcorrecting. Okay. When you start learning new things like this, at least for me, it was really hard for me to learn how do I embody it. I had a coach who was um, like it's time for you to access your rage. Like you need to figure out how to get access to that. And it was hard for me to figure out what to be raging about. I was like, what do you mean rage? I read those all the time. Read what? What did you read? Um I was like, what do you mean be rage? And I was like, I know I don't really like get super angry, and it happens very rarely. Very I don't even think I was regulated. I just knew how to suppress it really well. Okay. I was very much in my survival adaptation moment because it was still easy for me to go from feeling like I had it all together into, oh my gosh, I'm like in full on survival still. Okay. But learning to go from that to embodiment requires this integration period. All right. So, how do I embody clarity? And just speaking in general terms, how do we embody clarity without overcorrecting? Okay. We're not wanting to be super harsh with people. Like, we still love people. Um, but this is how we can prevent bigger issues in the long run. So, if we're not clear up front, it might create issues in the long run. Okay. So, speak up early is one thing to embody and integrate. If you don't do this, um, then you might be trying to like overcorrect at a time where there's resentment already built up. Okay. We're trying to avoid that resentment buildup and then just speak early. These are my boundaries. These are my boundaries. And then make sure your boundaries are getting honored. If they're getting stepped over, then speak into it and say, hey, look, I said that I wanted this, and you continue to do that. And now I'm starting to feel resentful because you're not listening to what I have to say. Okay. Like this delayed clarity becomes aggression. All right. But when you speak early, it's not as like you don't have a history that you're trying to like overcorrect. Okay. Use clean language. All right. This saying things like this doesn't work for me, but this works for me. We're saying this works for me. I like it when you clean up after yourself in the kitchen. Or this doesn't work for me. This being when you don't clean up after yourself in the kitchen, that's not working for me. Like, how are we going to correct that? Okay. You don't need to over explain when you're using that clean language. And even when a boundary, not necessarily that when it's getting crossed, but when a boundary is being respected, like speak into that as well. Honor that. I really appreciate that, when I said clean up after yourself in the kitchen, that you've been doing that. And I see you and I respect that. Thank you so much for honoring that for me. It means a lot. They say a lot of those are AI generated. Generated. Who? They say a lot of those are AI generated. What are you talking about? Who is they? And what is a lot of those? All right. The next one is regulate before you communicate. Okay. Get to a place where you're not feeling a strong emotion, that you're very well regulated. Okay. Clarity lands best when it comes from a grounded state. Maybe you need to go take a little bit of time and just kind of meditate, or maybe you need to work out and just kind of work the things out in your mind and then in your body at the same time. You're like getting that somatic movement going. Um, so make sure that you're feeling very regulated before you start communicating, and then hold the line without justifying it. Um, you don't need to have consensus to be clear. In fact, when you're clear, it might cause a lot of people to shift around and change, because like when you speak, like I said, the universe is listening to what you're saying, and then it's moving the things around in your life to honor what you're saying. So if you're saying something negative, it's going to move around and it's going to perpetuate whatever that negative thing is. But if you shift to positive, then the positive things are going to start happening. Okay. But you don't need consensus. You don't need to justify. Um, there's no need for any of that. If you're cleared, you're speaking and communicating clearly, you don't have to. Finally, while you're integrating this and embodying it, let people have their reactions. If people are going to have reactions, let them. Okay? Their discomfort is not your misalignment. Their discomfort is not your misalignment. People are going to react in all the ways they're going to react. And there's allegedly 8 billion people on this planet. Okay? The maybe 200 people that are in your field, that are interacting in your energy field, they they can go if they want. That's fine. All right? But let them have their reactions. Let them figure that out. They're you're allowed to change and grow and shift, and definitely if you're going to be taking the reins in your own life, that's good for you. That's where you want to be. Like, you have this really intimate relationship with yourself. Honor that. That's what this that's what this is all about here. Okay? And the more you become clear and the more you become aligned, the more expanded you become. And the more you can connect to spirit and have that full celestic experience. Okay? Of having your body, your mind, your emotions, and your soul all working together, and then connecting to like other worlds. It's amazing. Okay. Now, closing our transmission here. It's almost 9:30. Uh, clarity will cost you access to people who require your confusion. Clarity will cost you access to people who require your confusion. And that's not a bad thing. You don't want those people accessing you, anyways, if they just want to manipulate you or use you. But it will buy you self trust, which is beautiful and amazing. Clean relationships, like I said, once you start to become clear, some people are going to be magnetized away, and there's going to be new people that are magnetized in. And it will also buy you real power. Now, when you start speaking from clarity, you're building up that personal power from being wherever it's at, and you're getting up to a higher frequency. All right. And I think that's a great transaction there. um, so all in all, you're not here to be agreeable. You're here to be accurate. And the more accurate and the more stabilized you become, the more pleasurable life is going to be for you. It's going to feel a lot better. And yes, if you've been operating in this place of unclear communication boundaries, energy, and being distorted, then yes, it's gonna feel it's gonna feel a little difficult. Father, I have no idea what you're talking about, Mike. I'm gonna have to figure it out. Um, okay, so you're not here to be agreeable. You're here to be accurate. Self-accurate is part of having this clarity. And that's why may seem aggressive to people, but like it let them have their reactions. If they think that you're too difficult, that you're too this, that you're too that, then let them. Okay? They can go find less people that have less. People that are less intense. They can go find people that are easy. There's lots of people like that out there. And they can go magnetize to them and hopefully help develop them into a place where they become clear and have really strong boundaries, because that the more people that can get attuned to themselves and be self-accurate, the better our world becomes, because it raises the vibes and the frequencies. Okay, all right, well, thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Episode 60, I can't even believe it. And on Tuesday we're doing episode 61. And we're going to be talking about, I think, coherence. So I'm going to be popping in with coherence. Is it because? Oh, oh, I can see my top fans. Hello. That's cool. I was wondering if, like, maybe my chat changes or something. I don't even know what I'm doing. Oh my god. Sorry, guys. How fun. Okay. What's this one? Oh, sticker? Oh, cute. Okay, well, I won't mess with that. Anyways, thank you guys so much. We're going to be talking about coherence on Tuesday and episode 61. So I would appreciate it if you could subscribe and then like and do all the fun things and help support me in the Celestic Intelligence podcast growth of my channel. My name is Amelie. I am the creator, host, and I guess instructor, teacher of this beautiful podcast. And I appreciate every eyeball that's been here. Your attention is a wonderful currency. And I will hopefully, you guys will have a great weekend, and I'll see you on Tuesday.